Thank you very much, Greg. Good to have your company this morning. Well, today it starts. The huge tobacco companies up against the potentially even huger Australian government. To talk to us about this plain package fight, which is taking place in the High Court, is Tim Andrews, Australian Taxpayers Alliance. How are you, Tim?
Good, thanks for having me.
Not at all. Are you just a filthy organisation that is supported, funded by the tobacco companies so that you can pervert the course of justice?
Unlike the people who have received millions of dollars in taxpayer funding to support the government's position, we haven't received a cent in tobacco funding. We're doing this because this is a policy that, just like pink bats, just like schools' halls, the government put out a policy without thinking about it. They rushed it through with no evidence. It's going to be ruled illegal by the High Court, and taxpayers are once again going to foot the bill to the tune of billions of dollars for this bungle.
All right, we'll talk about some of these things, but essentially what you're saying is your organisation doesn't really care about smoking. Smoking isn't the issue here. The issue, as you see it, is bad legislation.
Look, that's right. This isn't about smoking per se. It's about whether the government can steal the private property rights of a company.
All right, so you're talking about things like logos and things like
Yes.
that.
Anyone who's, you've seen the movie The Castle, you'll know the government can't take someone's private property. Intellectual property, like logos and trademarks, are just as important
hang on a second, Tim.
as private property.
In your analogy, these huge tobacco companies are the Kerrigans.
Yes.
With a little house at the end of a runway in the castle.
Up against an even bigger government, as you put it, which has all the resources.
It's a lovely analogy.
Of the Australian
They will love you for that. Even though you're not in their pocket, they will absolutely love you for that. Now, is it slightly different? Because I know you say that the government doesn't have the right to do it, but with tobacco companies, the government has flesh in the game, doesn't it? The government is, to a degree, footing the bill for the result of people being addicted to tobacco. So there is flesh in the game.
Look, you could argue that, from a factual perspective, people smoking doesn't really cost the government because people die earlier.
And people pay tax.
And people pay tax.
It costs the government an extreme amount.
Well, but people do pay tax. People pay a lot of tax to cover that.
The evidence is that it actually saves taxpayers money in the long run. But that's not the issue here. The issue is if the government can dictate to a private company what they can put on their labels, what next? In England, the government is looking at plain packaging for alcohol. Fast food is obviously going to be next. If we let the government get away with doing this for tobacco, where do you draw the line? The precedent is what's important here. It's a matter of principle about private property rights.
Now, you said earlier on in this that it will cost the Australian taxpayer a lot of money because the government effectively will lose. There are some significant legal minds who think the government have a very strong case and a good chance of winning.
And there are even more significant legal minds who have looked at the 3 cases currently against the government. The World Trade Organization case, the violation of the bilateral treaty with Hong Kong, and the constitutional argument. And in fact, the actual legislation has clauses in it about what will happen when the government loses the High Court case. The government has effectively admitted in the legislation that they're legally in the wrong, and the taxpayers are going to have to bail them out.
Yes, all right,
Tim, I've got a really quick question. You're saying that this legislation is ill-thought-out policy and it's hasty. You've likened it to pink bats. How do you think it should have been thought out? What sort of policy do you want to see to try and curb smoking in the country?
Firstly, there's not a shred of evidence this will curb smoking. None. The government commissioned a study 2 months before they put this out to try and find some evidence, and it still hasn't reported. There is no evidence anywhere around the world this will reduce smoking. All the logos do is people decide which brand they want to smoke, and it stops counterfeiting. But secondly, I actually think we need to get back to personal responsibility. Rather than the government dictating every single thing that adults can and can't do, rather than having a nanny state, having this government minister saying, we're making the decisions for your life for you, people should be treated like adults, they should be given the respect they deserve, and people should actually take responsibility for their own lives.
And you see, fundamentally, I agree with you, but there are some differences there, and those differences are when the choices that some people make impact on other people.
Exactly,
Sure.
and how they impact on the health system alone.
But having said that, cigarette smokers do pay an awful lot of money in tax, and there is a school of thought that suggests that maybe they more than cover the actual cost of their care. Anyway, it's time to go, but we will watch this with a great deal of care. Probably we won't watch it as close as you're watching it, though, Tim. Tim Andrews from the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, thank you very much for joining us. And obviously, Henry Hotline, we would be very interested to know what you think about this, because you know what's next down the line? The next down the line is fat tax. the next down the line
That's
will
never-
be taxes on burgers and things like that.
Well, and that was something Tim brought up. But
Yep.
Anyway, there you go.
It's on its way.
Now, there's two challenges going this